The saga of the greater Mughals was at first the history of Hindustan. After Muazzam, it slowly became the chronicle of a province, then the story of a city. It finally became the account of a fort and the anecdotes of a family. Muazzam was followed by nearly a dozen monarchs who strutted, staggered, and pranced on the peacock throne, some for a month, some for a year, some for many years. The legends about them talked of their foolishness, or their cruelty, or their weakness, none about their strength, their determination, or their courage. This, then, is their story. Muazzam's son Jahandar Shah ruled for but a year. His reign would have passed unnoticed had it not been for the extreme depravity and debauchery displayed by the monarch. That the 51-year-old emperor was enamored by Lal Kamar, a common young dancing girl from the markets of Chandni Chowk, was not in itself a cause for anxiety, but when he made her his chief empress and allowed her to interfere in the matters of state, the empire came close to chaos. The emperor had lost all sense of his own prestige. Ignoring court etiquette, he would set out in the evening with his beloved in a bullock cart to explore the nightlife of the city. He would visit kotas of dancing girls, brothels of well-known tawaiffs, and even country liquor taverns populated by the scum of the city. One night, after a particularly hard bout of drinking, the emperor and his consort returned in the bullock cart to the palace in a stupor. Lal Kamar's maids carried her off to the Rang Mahal, and then the driver of the cart, who had probably also had a drop too many, took the cart off. Next morning, when a panicked palace guard instituted a search, the protector of the world was found dead drunk in a hovel outside the palace gate. Now, as Lal Kamar's relatives were being appointed to the positions of power in the state, the old Umara and the chieftains who adorned the Darbar started to melt away. Rather than be sullied by the presence of tabla and sarangi players in court, these amirs retired to their estate and subas. The Diwan-e Khas now resembled a musician's gallery. The resentment of the amirs was growing. Then one day,
My lord, my brother has written a piece of music dedicated to your reign. May he dance for you in court today?
Of course. Wah! Sheer genius! From today I appoint you Khushal Khan, Governor of Agra.
O gracious monarch, O generous emperor, how can I thank you?
But when Khushal applied for the legal order from the Wazir, Zulfiqar Khan, he was told that a certain fee had to be paid before the formal appointment. Khushal Khan immediately agreed. Without batting an eyelid, the Wazir asked for 4,000 musical instruments. Lal Kamar was furious when she heard of this insult and instigated the emperor into castigating his Wazir.
Why did you make an absurd demand for 1,000 sarangis and 3,000 tablas from Khushal?
My emperor, this is a genuine requirement of the amirs and officers of state.
Why?
Your faithful amirs are out of work these days, as the officers of state are being occupied by tabla and sarangi players. These instruments distributed among them will enable them to train for another profession.
The embarrassed emperor kept quiet. Now more and more people in Delhi were looking east, where Farrukh Sir, Jahandar Shah's nephew, had raised the banner of revolt. Finding little support in Bengal, Farrukh Sir applied to the Nazim in Patna, Hussain Ali Khan, who was a Sayyid. Direct descendants from the family of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, the Sayyids were known to be men of honor. Loyalty and sacrifice were emotions taught to them on their mother's knee and reinforced every year as they commemorated the martyrdom of Imam Hussain alayhis salam in Muharram. The Sayyid had been appointed to his post by the prince's father and retained a sense of loyalty to his family. Farrukh Sir recognized this and threw himself at the Sayyid's mercy. He then sent his mother and little daughter to meet Hussein's mother. The Sayyid was summoned to this meeting, where Farrukh Sir's little daughter clung to his legs, wept and begged for help in the name of the Prophet's family, peace be upon them. The Sayyid melted. He roped in his elder brother, who was the Nazim of Allahabad, and declared Farrukh Sir Emperor of Hindustan at a ceremony in Patna. Khutbahs were read in his name, and soon disaffected nobles gathered under the leadership of the Sayyid brothers. In a decisive battle outside Agra, Jahandar Shah was defeated, held in captivity in the Naubat Khana in this very fort, where he was strangled with his consort Lal Kamar. The irony of fate was that 5 years later, in the very same Naubat Khana, Emperor Farrukh Sir was strangled in the same way. The two emperors have been forgotten in the sands of time, but legend has it that the spirit of Lal Kamar wanders this fort even today. The next ruler, Muhammad Shah, occupied the throne for nearly 30 years. But instead of giving the realm stability, this merry monarch, known as Rangila, the colorful king, abdicated all responsibility and spent his time in dance and debauchery. Raiders from the north began eyeing the wealth of India, and in 1739, Nadir Shah the Persian invaded the land. But by now the Mughal Empire had lost its authority. None came to Muhammad Shah's assistance. His army was routed and Rangila surrendered. He opened the doors of the city for the invaders and personally escorted Nadir Shah to the Qila-e-Mohalla. The Persian cleaned out the royal treasury. He gouged out precious stones from the palace. He stripped the Divan-e-Khas of silver and gold. The citizens' temper began to rise. An unfortunate incident with a pigeon seller led to a fight in the bazaar. The disturbance soon spread and unarmed Persian soldiers were attacked and killed all over the city. The invaders' retribution was swift and deadly. Nadir Shah rode out of the fort to the Roshan-ud-Dawla mosque, drew his sword from his scabbard and ordered a general massacre. From 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, 20,000 men, women, and children were killed. The city was burnt, its residents butchered. Rivers of blood flowed down the streets of Chandni Chowk. The emperor sent Nizamul Mulk to placate the Shah.
No one has been spared by the avenging sword. If it is your wish to carry on the work of destruction further, put life back in the corpses and slaughter them again and again and again.
It was indeed the twilight of the Mughal Empire. Many years after the raiders had left, the last indignity was conferred upon this unfortunate emperor in his death. To conceal his demise until the arrival of his son Ahmad Shah from the northwest, the emperor's body was hastily wrapped up in a tablecloth borrowed from the royal kitchen and placed in the case of a European grandfather clock and buried in the garden. The reign of Shah Alam II saw an impotent monarchy being raped and ravaged by a former retainer, the brigand Rohilla Ghulam Qadir. No Afghan raider, no Persian invader had been so brutal as Qadir. He raided Delhi, deposed the emperor, sat upon his chest, brutally tore out his eyes, and left him bleeding on the floor of the Divan-e-Khas for 2 days without food and water. He blinded 3 other princes, raped the emperor's wives and daughters, and made them dance in the nude in drunken orgies for his soldiers. The Qila'e-Mohalla was finally rescued by Begum Samru and the Marathas. They restored the blind king to the throne, captured Ghulam Qadir, gouged his eyes out, chopped off his hands and feet, and strung him up from a tree outside the fort. The children in and around Chandni Chowk would now sing.
It's from Delhi to Palam.
Hands up and down!
It's from Delhi to Palam.
But the kingdom of Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal emperor, did not even extend to Palam. His authority ran only within the walls of the Red Fort, and even here it was subject to the whims and fancies of the British resident. But the people of Hindustan, both Hindu and Muslim, looked up to Zafar with affection and respect as he presided over a composite culture free from the narrow confines of religion or politics. In 1837, when the 62-year-old monarch ascended the throne, the rule of the East India Company had been established all over the country. Zafar was a scholar and a poet, a gentle soul. He spoke Urdu, Arabic, Persian, Braj Bhasha and Punjabi, and wrote poetry in all. Under him, Delhi went through a cultural renaissance. When he was not administering the fort, Bahadur Shah discussed philosophy or astronomy with his peers. He designed gardens and pavilions. In the monsoon, he flew kites. In winter, he flew pigeons. In the evening, he wrote poetry. At night, he listened to music. Lyrics and verse was so popular that at one time there were over 500 published poets in the city, with 50 from the royal family itself. Culture permeated to all levels of society. Barbers were amongst the published poets, as were eunuchs and soldiers. His court had a collection of the most distinguished poets of Urdu, Momin, Dard, Zauq, and of course the most acclaimed poet of all times, Mirza Asadullah Khan Ghalib. Mushairas that took place in the Diwan-e-Khas then are celebrated to this day in the city. But even while Delhi was steeped in poetry and culture, disaffection and discontent was brewing all over the country. Then, one day, below the Asad Burj of the Red Fort,
दुहाई बादशाह सलामत की दुहाई
दुहाई बादशाह सलामत की दुहाई
बादशाह
सलामत की दुहाई
बादशाह सलामत जिंदाबाद
मुगलिया सल्तनत पाइंदाबाद बहादुर शाह जफर जिंदाबाद दुहाई बादशाह सलामत की दुहाई
दुहाई
दुहाई बादशाह सलामत की दुहाई.
the Sipahis of Meerut had struck a blow for independence and had arrived at Delhi.
The Mughal Empire has been restored.
What is this noise? From where did this rabble appear?
The Firangi has been killed, Your Majesty. We have come to restore you to your rightful place.
What is this talk? Who are you? What do you want?
Sarkar, we have come to our king to appeal for help.
But I am not a king, just a fakir who spends his time in the worship of God.
We are
I
being
have neither
defiled.
an army
Muslims
nor
and Hindus are
treasury.
being made to swallow
How
the
can
fat
I
of pigs
help?
and cows as we bite cartridges to load our weapons.
Zafar had no sympathy for the British, but he had neither the means nor the inclination to head a revolt at the age of 80. But soon the tone of the soldiers got belligerent and threatening. The emperor was forced to agree to lend his name to their effort. Within days, a minor regimental mutiny had become a war of independence. With Zafar at its head, its legitimacy was certainly greater than the British regime it challenged. Deen or Dharm became the combined battle cry of Muslims and Hindus. But without a chain of command, without a comprehensive strategy, the struggle was doomed to failure. With the help of loyal Sikh troops, the British regained control, and on the 20th of September, the Lahore gate of the Red Fort was blown up, and troops under General Wilson marched into the fort to take control. The inmates of the fort were degraded and disgraced, and the old emperor was tormented, ill-treated, and abused.
हर एक बात पे कहते हो तुम कि तू क्या है? तुम ही कहो ये अंदाज़ गुफ्तगू क्या है? चिपक रहा है बदन पे लहू से पैरहन, हमारी जेब को अब हाजते रफू क्या है?
The Delhi of Ghalib and Zauq was destroyed. Never in history was such brutality unleashed on a people as the British did on the helpless inhabitants of Delhi. Every gully of Delhi, every kucha, every bazaar was choked with the stench of rotting bodies. In every house, women had been raped, children had been speared, old people had been hacked to death. young English officers took pleasure in stomping people to death in the streets. The Jama Masjid was converted to a stable. The Zenat Masjid in Daryaganj became a bakery, and the Fatehpuri Mosque was turned into a store. What was left of the population of Delhi was turned out after being stripped of every meager belonging. The city was then dug up by officers hunting for treasure. Houses were demolished. Mansions were burned to the ground.
जला है जिस्म जहां दिल भी जल गया होगा कुरेद दे हो जो अब राख जुस्तजू क्या है रगों में दौड़ते फिरने के हम नहीं कायल जब आँख ही से न टपका तो फिर लहू क्या है यूं ही गर रोता रहा गालिब तो अहले जहां देखना उन बस्तियों को तुम के वीरान हो गई
It was nearly 2 years before the population was allowed to return to a ghost city. The old emperor had been debased, insulted and humiliated, put in a dungeon. A farcical trial followed in which the military tribunal concluded that the revolt was an international Mohammedan conspiracy with Zafar at its head. On the 7th of October at 4 in the morning, the Emperor of Hindustan was loaded into a bullock cart and sent into exile to Rangoon. 30 princes of the house of Babar and 26 other members of the royal family were shot, hung, or executed in a bloodbath without precedence in the history of India. Within the Red Fort, some of the most stunning palaces in the world were pulled down to build barracks for the British Tommies. Four years later, Zafar died in Rangoon and was buried in an unmarked grave. And thus ended the greatest, the most powerful dynasty to have ruled Hindustan. They had come here as conquerors, but had made this country their motherland. In the 300 years they were here, races had intermixed and cultures had intermingled. Suspicion had melted away and doubt had given way to confidence. A new Ganga Jamni culture created belief, interdependence and trust. But with the British there had always been a distance. There had always been distrust. For the next 80 years this fort, while housing the garrison at Delhi, remained a mute witness to the oppression and tyranny of the state. It silently watched the subjugation of India and the suppression of Indians. It also saw the birth of the independence movement. It saw the coming of Gandhi, the rise of Nehru. It saw the trials of the Indian National Army. It was witness to the growth of nationalism. The time of the imperial Raj was now running out. The sun was finally setting on the British Empire. And then on the stroke of the midnight hour, on the 15th of August 1947, India was declared independent, and Jawaharlal Nehru was declared its first Prime Minister. The ramparts of the Red Fort were used for his first public address to the people of India. The ramparts of the Red Fort were used for his first public address to the people of India. Ever since, every Indian Prime Minister has addressed the nation from here on Independence Day. As India takes a lead in the world of the 21st century, this medieval citadel of Shah Jahan stands proud as a symbol of democratic rule and representative authority. ये चमन यूं ही रहेगा और हजारों नामवर अपनी अपनी बोलियां सब बोल के मिट जाएंगे.
I have no desire to take part in the kingship of this deceitful and insecure world. My only wish is to retire and spend the rest of my days in the worship of God. But first, I must place you, my dear brother, on the throne in Delhi. If Dara rules, there will be no Taimuri dynasty left. He will convert this Darul Islam into Darul Harb, a state only for idolatrous heathens. From today, I will address you as Badshah Ji, and you will address me as Hazrat Ji. I place my hands on the holy book and swear my loyalty to you. What wailing is this? What has happened? Who is dead?
Your Majesty, music has been murdered. We are taking its corpse for burial.
Bury it deep so that no sound of it ever rises again.
I did not want you to break your vows. I just wanted to see if you loved me more than anything in the world.
But I do, my love, I do. I would do anything to bring a smile to those beautiful lips. Anything.
Oh, my prince.